Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take care of this issue right here. You remember I said in the design video that if you put down a torch and you just leave the shadows static like this, it doesn't really look right? Something's off here. I mean, you can definitely see that there's something not quite right about the shadows. And what's not quite right is they should be bouncing around a little bit. So we're going to take care of that in this episode. Before I do that, however, something I forgot to do in the last episode, I'm going to pop open Visual Studio on the torch toggle script and also on the torch toggle editor script. I'm going to turn off this thing. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We have all these debug log deals in here. We don't really need these anymore, so let's go ahead and clean that up. Clean that out, and then also clean that out. Additionally, I think if I'm not mistaken, there's no reason for these to be public. So let's try making this private. I haven't tested this yet, guys, so we'll see if this actually works. But I can't think of any reason why those need to be public. It's always... There you go, nice. It's always good to hide your variables when you can, okay? And there just isn't any reason for that to be... for these to be accessed anywhere outside this class. Now this one, of course, we want to be active. But the other thing about this is, guys, you remember, if you look down in the torch component, and we scroll down here, we've got both these buttons going on here, right? This is kind of unnecessary, okay? We've already kind of talked about how there's no real reason to have two buttons here. What I'm going to do... I don't think I can make this private because I think it's being accessed by the yeah, it does say it's exceeded. Let's see what happens. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it can't access it. That's Visual Studio is not picking up on it because it's because these are this thing right here is a Unity command, so it's not really Visual Studio isn't really picking up on the fact that it can't access this because as far as Visual Studio is concerned, it's not accessing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that back to public, and then that should take care of the error we're getting in Unity. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. The console was giving me an old error. Okay, so we're good. So what I'm going to do, rather than make that private, is I'm going to say hide in inspector, so that variable doesn't actually come on. Over here, all we have is the torch on variable, and there you go. We're actually looking at this torch over here, but okay, so that's a little cleaner. Otherwise, I think it's all good, guys. I think we're all set here. Yeah, looks fine. Technically, guys, we could have actually just dropped out this whole line right here. I mean, this really isn't super necessary either. But, just two different ways of doing it. Okay, so let's come back into Unity, and we're going to build another script in here. So create a C# script, and I'm going to call this why are you being a pain? Come here. We're going to call this fire random light position. We'll just go with that. Technically, it's gonna vary the position, but also the intensity of the light. But that's good enough for right now. Okay, so we can get rid of these guys. We don't need these anymore. So, like I said, we're gonna vary both the position and the intensity of this light. All right. So what I want to do here, guys, is set up a few public variables so that we have controls over on the editor side. First off, let's set up a float max variance, and just have it set to something. We'll set it to 0.05. Okay, this is in meters, guys. So this is going to be the maximum distance the position of the light can vary in either the X, Y, or Z directions. Okay. Additionally, we're going to set up another public variable called time stop. And we're going to set that equal to 0.05 seconds. Okay. We don't want the light bouncing all over the place super fast. We want it to spend a certain amount of time at a particular position. Okay. So let's just start with that. We're going to start with the X, Y, and Z positions. Okay. All right. Let's just go ahead, drop into Unity, make sure that's working. Okay, right. We need to put this onto our light. So I'm gonna go with this torch right here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop this random light script onto the light source, because that's what we're doing. We got an error. Why do we have an error? Because I didn't rename the script. So you got the script name has to be the same as the script name. Okay, the class name. That's a Unity thing, guys. Of course, in C# doesn't care, but Unity does care. So, okay, now we should be good. Let's drop this onto the light source. And there you go. Okay, I guess I should probably turn on this light. Let's turn him on, since we're going to play with him. I'm actually going to take this torch over here and turn him off. Alright. Okay, so there you go. We've got a max variance and a time stop for the X, Y, and Z position of the light. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, what I want to do, guys, is in the update function. Now, the update function runs once per frame. Okay, so every time a frame is drawn, the update function fires. Okay, we need to set a current time. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to create a private float current time. Okay, and we'll set this equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to, like I said, remember, guys, we only want to change the position of the light source at a particular time if the current time is greater than the time stop. So if current time is greater than time stop, okay, at this point we know that we've gone over. We haven't set either one of these yet, right? But at some point we will, and we know that the current time is bigger than the time step, so it's time to change the position of the light. So first of all, let's get a position change. So I'm going to say position change equals random dot value. Now you can see from the hint here, guys, returns a random number between 0 and 1.0. Okay, inclusive. So what I'm going to do is, since we're going from 0 to 1, I'm going to subtract off 0.5 from that. Whoops, I just lost my cursor. 0.5. And what that's going to do is give us a number between minus 0.5 and 0.5. Okay. So then, from there, we want to multiply that by the max variance. Okay. Now that's going to give us half the max variance in one direction and half the max variance in the other direction, so we're going to multiply that by 2. Another way to look at that, guys, is if this gives us a number between minus 0.5 and 0.5, and then you multiply by 2, what it's going to end up giving you is a random value between minus 1 and 1, which is what we want. And then we're going to multiply that by the max variance. So the max variance is going to go anywhere from, or so the position is going to go anywhere from the negative max variance to positive max variance, somewhere in between that that location. Okay. So we'll do float pause change as just a variable. Okay, so we've got our position that we want this light to change by. Okay. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to set up kind of a switch up here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is say private int trans switch. And I'm going to set this equal to a default of 0. Because what I want to do is I want to change the position, but I want to do the X, Y, and Z axes sequentially. We could do it randomly, would also work fine, but I'm just going to do a switch just to keep it moving around. I don't want it to get stuck on, X too many times in a row and things like that. So switch. Where did it go? Trans switch. There we are. Okay, so we'll do case 0, case 1, and case 2. Let's just set up our break statements real quick while I think about how to explain this next part. Oops, I got the caps lock on. Okay, we want the light to move around, but we don't want it to go past this max variance, right? So we got to start from kind of its default location, right? So what I want to do here is set up a default location variable, and that's going to be a vector 3 default position. Okay. And then in the start we can say default position equals transform dot position. Okay, that's its initial location. Okay, so we get that before any changes happen to it. So that way we have the position stored, and we can change it, the transform position now, and then always get back to its initial position whenever we need to. So I'm going to put in here a member variable, or just a variable, I guess. We're going to get another vector 3. I'm just going to say current position. And what we're going to do is for case 0, we're going to say cur position dot x equals default position dot x plus plus Why are you doing that? Quit it. Plus. Darn thing. Position change. Okay, remember we've already calculated the position change we want. So that'll give us a random position on the x-axis. Okay, then here I'm going to change my trans switch equal to 1. Okay, I'm going to do this for case 2 and case 3. Here we're going to change the y position, and here we're going to change z, and then we're going to say 2 and 0. Now there's other ways you could do this, guys. You could do transposition as a division and then use a modulo to get a number between 0 and 2, and etc, etc. This is just a simple, quick, easy way to update it without things getting too terribly fancy. Okay, so we've updated one of the 3, whoops, make sure we change this, positions. Before we can do this, we actually kind of have to, what we're doing here, guys, is we are setting one of the 3 current positions, but up here, actually right here, before the switch, we need to actually set current position equals transform dot position. That way, if we're setting the x value, the y and z will be equal to the current position of the light. All right. Otherwise, the first time you get down here, y and z won't be set to anything in current position. So we need these set to the current position of the light. Then we change one of the 3 positions. Okay, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and set the transform position. Transform dot position equal to current position. Very simple. And then from there, we just have to reset the current time back to 0. Okay, now for this to work, of course, we have to update current time, right? That's pretty much, I think, the last thing we have to do. So outside of all this, the if statement, okay, but still in the function, we want to update that current time. So current time equals, sorry, plus equals time dot delta time. And what that does is it just, time dot delta time is the amount of time that's passed since the last time the update function ran. So this will update the number of seconds since the last time, and so this continually goes up until it hits greater than time stop. Then it runs this routine, and then it sets it back to 0. And I really should put this up 0.0f. Okay. All right, guys. Did we forget anything? We set the trans switch equal to 0. We set the default position. I think we're good. Let's save that and see what happens. So let's go into Unity and run it. And run it. Come on. Okay, there it goes. You see the lights moving. The shadow's bouncing around a little bit, which is what we want. Okay, pretty nice. So if we go into, we still got the game running, so you can still, you should still be able to see this light bouncing around. Well, maybe not. Let's see if I can get this thing to sit still. Okay. Yeah, it's running. Okay, so we got a couple of variables in here. So let's see what they do. Let's set this to like 3. So you can see with the time stop set to 3 seconds, it barely moves. It's hardly moving at all. Hopefully it's moving some. Let's set this back down to 0. Okay, you can see at 0 it's bouncing all over the place. So this is why we put in the time stop, because we don't want this kind of bounce. This is too much bounce. We set this to 0.1. Okay, this is moving every 1/10 of a second. That looks a little better. 0.05 is which is where we had it originally. So you can see it's bouncing around kind of nicely there. Let's play with the variance a little bit. Let's make a variance of 2. See, now you're all over the place. You can see why we want this to be a fairly low variance. Let's set it to 1. It's still too high. So 0.5. Better, but still jumping around too much. 0.1. So just to kind of look, I mean, obviously that's still way too much, right? Those shadows are all over the place. But it's getting closer. Let's see if I can set this thing back to where we can see it. Okay. So 0.05. Still probably too much. 0.01. So really it's just a matter of playing with the variable now. And by an amazing coincidence, guys, if we set it back down to the default values, it actually looks pretty good. Okay. There's nothing coincidental about that. I've played with these values a lot of times, and I know kind of where they should be. So, okay. So that's good. We got some bounce to the shadows, which is what we want. You can see this thing's moving around a little bit. So, let's stop this for a second. Let's grab this torch and we'll turn him back on. Let's go ahead and run this. It may be a bit of a subtle thing, guys, but it adds quite a bit of realism to the world, and I didn't put a script on this light source, did I? Okay, there you go. That should be bouncing. Yeah. And this one should be bouncing. Very nice. Okay. So there you go. We've got a pretty nice, we've got the shadows bouncing around a little bit, which is what we want. Alright. I want to try something here, guys. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. No, this is not going to work. I didn't think so. Okay. Just wanted to check that. I hate to put stuff in the start. The problem with putting stuff in start is you got to think about, well, when we have 300 torches in the level, when you run start fires when the game starts up. It's going to have to run through this 300 times, okay, for 300 different objects. That can add up to a significant delay. So I'm loath to put stuff into the start function. So that's our that's all we need to do for moving the light around a little bit. The second half of this, the second part that I want to play with, is the intensity of the light. Okay, because of course a torch fire is not going to be one brightness. It's going to vary up and down some. And actually, arguably, this is the more important part of the realism thing. The position is nice. I mean, the shadows move around, and that's important. But it's kind of a very subtle effect. And to be honest, a lot of people probably aren't even going to notice. They would notice if it wasn't there, but they're not going to notice if it is there. So, what I want to do is set up a couple more public variables here. So this is for position. Position property. Why not? And then we'll have intensity. Intensity properties. Okay. So public. So we're going to do an intensity. Can't spell that word. Minimum. And I'm going to set this equal to 0.005 F. Public float intensity max equal to 0.05 float. Okay, so we're going to have a minimum and a maximum. We don't want this jumping all over the place. So I'm going to smooth it out. I'm going to set the default of 10, just for no reason. Okay. Okay, guys. What I want to do here is I want to vary the intensity. I want to set a target intensity for light, and then I want to take this amount of time to go from the current intensity to this intensity. Okay, and once we hit this intensity, we'll set a new target intensity, set this back down to, set our counter back down to 0, then take this amount of time to go to the new intensity. So it'll constantly be going up and down and whatnot. Okay. So how are we going to do that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up another private float. Intensity time change. I'm going to set this equal to 0.0 float. I'm kind of being inconsistent with the names of these variables, to be honest. I'll take a look at them. We might clean that up a little bit in just a minute, but I want to get this code kind of in position. So we're going to need two variables for this. So I'm going to set up a new section for intensity variables. We're going to need a float. I guess we can call it private. We should specify intensity start and a private float intensity target. So this is the current intensity where it's starting at, and this is where it's going to over this amount of time. Okay. So in order to do that, there's a mathematical function we can use. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say light dot in. Why is this not working? Because I don't have a light variable. Do I need to set that up? I want to set up another variable to grab a reference to the light itself. We didn't have to do this in the position change because we used transform.position, and that's fine. We can do that. There's always a transform attached to the game object, so you can just say transform.position, and Unity knows what you mean. Okay. However, in the case of the light, we need to actually grab the light component. So component, we'll say light. And then here in the start, I'm going to say light equals get component light. Okay, so there you go. So now we've got a reference to the light component, which is, if you go into Unity, this is this thing right here. Okay, so now Down here in the update function, every frame we want to change the intensity of the light. Now this one, remember, we're going from where we are, the start function, to the target, varying by this amount of time. So we can say light dot intensity equals, and I'm not getting an intensity. Why is that? Okay guys, we're going to use a math function for this. So I'm going to go to math float dot, we're going to lerp, and lerp is just a, it's like a smoothing function over time, okay, and which is what we want. So we're going to go from intensity start, we want to end up at intensity target, and then the amount of time that it's going to take to go from one to the other. And what we want is intensity time change divided by the intensity smooth time. Okay, so what does that mean? So our intensity time change, which we currently have at 0, but we're going to update in a minute. So as this number gets higher and approaches this number, this will go from 0 to 1, right? And so this will vary between this number and this number based on, it'll start here and get closer and closer to this number as this number gets closer and closer to 1. Okay, that's how that works. I'm getting an error right here. Why is that? It was getting confused between light and light, and I don't blame it. It was confusing. Okay, so there's our light reference. Oh, let's fix that. Okay, so we got our light reference. We pick up the light from the get component command, which picks up that light, and then we're going to vary the intensity by this math function. Okay, so once we're done with that, now we need to increment intensity time change plus equals time dot delta time, like such. Okay, now we need to reset this if intensity time change actually hits its target. So intensity time change is greater than intensity smooth time. So a couple things we have to do down here. First of all, okay, we've hit our target, so now we need to get a new target. So let's change the target, intensity target, set that equal to random, and I'm going to get a range from intensity min, comma, intensity max. Which I don't see. Why don't I see intensity max? There it is. IntelliSense, you're killing me. Intensity start equals the current light intensity, so I'm going to go light reference. Reference dot intensity. And then we're going to reset intensity time change back to 0.0f. Okay? So those are the 3 things we need to do. Now, we also need to do these things, these same exact things, at the start of the function. Okay? To give ourselves an initial value. Otherwise, you're going to end up down here with a problem child. Okay. So what is this going to do? We're going to get a random number between intensity min and intensity max, right? This is going to start actually up here. The start is going to be equal to the current intensity of the light, and then we're going to set the time change equal to 0. When we get down to the update function, every frame, now this has nothing to do with any of this switching stuff, right? Every frame we're going to change the intensity, and we're going to start where it is, and we're going to go to where we want to go, the target, based on this lerp function. Then we're going to increment by the time that's passed. Okay, and then that'll happen every single frame. So the light will go to this target in this amount of time, which is what we want. Now, once we've hit our time change has hit the smooth time, we're going to get a new target. We're going to set the intensity to what it currently is. Okay, so whatever it happens to be, it could be really low at this point. And then we're going to reset our time change, so that'll start this whole cycle back over again. Okay, so that should be, if I've set that up right, everything we need to get this to work. So let's see what happens. For right now, guys, I'm going to take this torch, I'm going to turn him off because I just want to see this with one torch on at the moment. Alright, let's see what happens. Yeah, it's dimming. You see it dimming? Actually, it's dimming to 0. Okay, I think that's because we did not set up the minimum. Oh, well, we did. Okay, but they're very low levels. Okay. So over the course of 10 seconds, it dropped to almost nothing. Right now, the intensity is set at 1.5. Okay, so these defaults are not going to work for us. So I'm going to set this to a minimum intensity of, say, 1.2 and a maximum intensity of 1.7. These are the numbers I have. And I'm going to set an intensity smooth time of, say, 1 second. Let's speed that up a little bit. So you can see it's dimming there. Seems like it's dimming all the way back to 0 again. You know why, guys? Because I'm looking at the wrong torch. It's like, why is that not changing? And there's a reason for that. Alright, let's try that again, this time using the right torch. Let's try 1 second. Like, wow, that doesn't seem to be making any difference at all. Okay. There you go. It's kind of hard to tell. So let's do some extremes. We'll do a intensity min of 0, an intensity max of 5, and a smooth time of 1 second. Let's just make sure this is working the way we want it to. So there you go. So over the course of 1 second, it's bouncing up and down, which is what we want. Okay, I'm going to set this down to a little bit, oh, not that slow, 0.2 seconds. Let's see what that does for us. This should bounce it up and down pretty quick. Yeah, and there you go. That's kind of a nice time segment for the torch to be going up and down, I think, for fire. So now let's set the intensity to something a little more realistic. So I'm going to say 1.2 and 1.7. Let's go ahead and run that. And there you go. You got some nice up and down variation in the intensity of the light. Not to mention the shadows bouncing around a little bit, so it's really it's a nice effect. So there you go, guys. I'll go ahead and turn this torch back on. Not that torch, the other torch. and make sure his light source is set something reasonable. I think I set him already. So there you go. We got a couple of torches going. They're varying in the intensity of the light, which is a nice effect for a fire effect. And the shadows are bouncing around a little bit. They should be. Yeah, they should be. That's going to become a little more obvious when there are objects actually out in front of the torch, where you can see the shadows out here. There's right now, really the only shadow we're getting is kind of back, away from the torch. You can kind of see it on the arch column. So yeah, very nice, guys. So let's take a quick look at our variables here. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Everything seems to be working the way I want it to be working. So one of the things I don't like about this kind of is all this stuff in start. That might get to be a bit much. Intensity time change we've already set up here. We don't need to do this. Let's take this back out. Well, we'll leave it here, guys. I'll think about that, and maybe we'll think about these variable names and maybe what we can do about this. But I think this video is getting long enough. Yeah, we're sitting in almost an hour. Jeez, for a simple script. Okay, guys. So we'll leave it here, and we'll pick this up in the next video. I'll see you guys then. Thanks a lot.